Only a few days remained until May. Eva Harris watched the sparrows splashing in the puddles in the yard through the hospital corridor window. A feline was ambling along the fence. It went directly to the sparrows, squatted, and prepared to leap. When Eva saw the cat, she yelled at the striped hunter and opened the window. There was a lot of ruckus in the hospital backyard as the sparrows and cat separated. The nurse who was walking by said, "Why are you making so much noise? The hour is silent. Avoid upsetting other patients. Go to your ward, please." With a smile, Eva took a piece of paper out of her pocket and presented it to the nurse. She clarified, "I've already been discharged. I apologize for the loudness, but I'm waiting for my husband. I'm not going to do it again." She was instructed by the nurse to go downstairs and wait in the hallway for her husband. Eva dutifully went downstairs, and a few minutes later she was reclining in a squishy chair, massaging her round belly. People were coming and going, opening and closing the front door, running back and forth. Eva glanced at their faces, expecting to find Austin, her husband, but he was nowhere to be seen. Eva took out her phone to order a cab after checking her watch for the umpteenth time, but she decided against it after noticing two girls conversing while seated close by. Even though the females were leaning into one another and spoke gently, Eva could hear the majority of what they were saying. "I have no idea why I need this baby," one of the girls resignedly muttered, glancing at her tummy. "I have to work from dawn till dusk at 2 jobs, and Mason drinks but doesn't work anywhere. My mom was correct. Mason refused to let me get an abortion, even though I should have." "But it's a great sin," her friend acknowledged with a painful grimace. "They claim that it makes living extremely difficult. Sleep deprivation can lead to a variety of illnesses. It's an awful thing." After giving a sour smile, the first female abruptly became serious and turned to face her friend. "Isn't it a sin to have a child you can't provide for?" she inquired. "Isn't getting paid less than the minimum wage a horrible thing? I don't have a bright future and my dorm room is small. I tax all those humanists who discuss sin and misery, you know. Allow them to assist those like me." Eva was not able to hear the girl's other whisper. She got out of her chair, went to the check room for her coat, and went outdoors. Eva felt gloomy and chilly on the inside, even though it was a nice and sunny day. She was worried about her future as the two strangers conversed. Even though Eva was sure she would be fine, she and her husband Austin worked for the same company. Austin made good money and could provide for not just one child, but even triplets if he had to. Eva was making good money as well and was already financially independent. She knew that she was definitely not in danger of poverty, but she felt something gloomy inside, some kind of hopelessness and alienation. She felt as if she found herself alone on another planet. Sitting in a cab, she looked longingly at the gray houses. The same gray, featureless people lived there. They lived, rejoiced, grieved, loved, suffered, and died. Eva had never cared about them before, but now she was suddenly interested in them. "I used to be like them, and no one cared about me either," Eva thought, staring out the window again. When she was a child, her greatest dream was to have a father. She had Aunt Meredith instead of her mother. Meredith adopted little Eva when her mother passed away. Aunt Meredith knew nothing about Eva's father. Her sister, Evelyn, was secretive and did not say anything about her personal life. Besides, she lived in another city and saw her sister only a few times a year. Evelyn gave birth to Eva out of wedlock. To provide for her daughter, she went into huge debts, which she was never able to repay. She killed herself by taking a pack of sleeping pills. After her sister's funeral, Meredith adopted her orphan niece and made every effort to replace her mother. She succeeded. After learning to speak, Eva began to call Meredith her mother, thus rewarding her for all her efforts. When she reached school age, Eva often asked her aunt why there was no man in their house. All her classmates had fathers, older brothers, uncles, grandfathers, but Eva had only Meredith and no one else. Men never paid any attention to Meredith, so she only shrugged her shoulders and laughed it off. "When you grow up, you can get yourself a husband. Although, you know, I'd rather get a dog or a cat," was her typical answer. Eva was a child, so she didn't know what Meredith was talking about. But time passed. In high school and then at the university, she discovered what love, affection, pain, and separation were. But it all turned out to be trivial and naively childish when she met Austin, her future husband. It was when Eva had already graduated and got a job as a manager in one of the companies. She was still living with her aunt in a small apartment, not wanting to move to a new place. Either because of her strong attachment to Meredith or because it was very close to her office. One day on her way home from work, Eva stopped by the amusement park, strolled along the boardwalk, fed the stray dogs, and was about to go home when she noticed a guy sitting on the ground. It was the end of September, but the guy was dressed not warmly enough. He was wearing a tattered wool sweater, dirty jeans, and torn sneakers. But it was not his appearance that shocked her. It was his eyes that were eagerly watching the dogs eat the sausage. It seemed to Eva that he was about to attack the dogs and take their food from them. Feeling the girl's gaze on him, he looked away from the dogs and tried to look serious. He leaned back imposingly, crossed his legs, and waved coquettishly at Eva. She came over, sat down next to him, and asked what happened to him. "Nothing, just relaxing, watching the sunset," the boy said jokingly and laughed. But then a severe cough erupted from his throat and made the boy bend down. "You might have pneumonia," Eva said when the boy coughed. "You should see a doctor before it's too late." The boy tried to look serious again and waved his hand carelessly. "It's all right. It happens to me sometimes," he explained. Eva nodded and noticed a box with some coins at the bottom of it standing near his feet. The guy immediately kicked the box away with his foot, but it was too late. The girl had seen it. "I see you're homeless," Eva realized, shaking her head. "So, what happened to you?" The guy started making excuses, saying he was fine and actually wasn't homeless. He was looking for some adventure and wanted to live on the streets for a while, just out of boredom. "So I'm all right, and there's nothing to worry about," he said, but he didn't finish. The coughing came back, even worse than before. He fell to his knees and grabbed his chest, trying to numb the unbearable pain. Eva rushed to help him, and when she touched his hand, she pulled her palm away. The guy was hot as an iron. "All right, come with me," Eva said sternly, holding the poor man by the waist. "We need to bring your temperature down right away, or you won't make it through the morning." She waved to a passing cab, pulled the boy into it, and told the cab driver to drive as fast as he could. Upon arriving home, Eva put the sick man to bed and forced him to take some antipyretic. "By the way, my name is Austin," the boy said hoarsely, squinting his eyes from the bright light. "What's yours?" Eva told him her name, and the boy fell asleep after repeating Eva's name several times. In the morning, Austin recovered a little. The fever that had been bothering him for days was gone, and the coughing wasn't bothering him as much as yesterday. At breakfast, when Eva served him in bed, Austin confessed to her that he was not an adventurer, but the victim of a robbery. It turned out that he had arrived here to apply for a job 2 weeks ago and was met at the train station by a cab driver. The driver offered Austin a very cheap ride, and he bought it. The cabbie took him to a vacant lot outside the city where his friends awaited. They beat Austin badly, took everything he had, including his clothes, and left him there. "But why didn't you just go to the police?" Eva asked. "Those bastards must have left the city by now." "I did," Austin answered gloomily. "I went to the police as soon as I came to my senses, but they refused to accept my statement. They didn't believe me and said that apparently I drank it all away myself, and now I'm just making up tall tales." "Tell me, do I look like a drunk?" the boy asked. Eva looked into Austin's pale face and shook her head. "I don't think so," she replied, though I could be wrong. Austin laughed and began to tell her about his parents living in the village, his school and university years, and many other things he had long wanted to share with someone. Eva silently listened to his long, frank monologue while minding her own business, and Austin kept talking. "Where are your parents?" Austin suddenly asked, making Eva feel uncomfortable. "I don't have parents," Eva answered after a short pause. "I only have an aunt. She's out of the city now, so meeting her will have to wait." Austin wanted to ask about her parents, but he considered it inappropriate, so he shut up. Thanks to Eva's care, the boy fully recovered in a few days. Eva lent him some more money to restore his ID and rent an apartment, and promised that she would try to find him a job at the company she worked for. After a couple more days, her aunt came back. She noticed that Eva had changed a lot during her absence and asked what happened, but Eva just smiled mysteriously. Eva didn't want to say anything about Austin, at least not until he was back on his feet and their relationship was clear. Eva didn't have to wait long for that. A month later, Austin got his first paycheck and invited Eva to a restaurant, where he proposed. Then there was the wedding, moving into a new apartment, and the news that she was pregnant. It was all happening so fast that Eva's head was spinning. Constancy came into her life only at the hospital, where Eva came for a checkup before the delivery. There, talking to other pregnant women and doctors, she realized that the greatest happiness was yet to come. Everything else was just a short prelude. Stopping a cab halfway home, Eva asked the cab driver to take her to the office. She hadn't been there in almost a month. She missed the work environment and her colleagues. She also wanted to see their reactions to her arrival, to listen to all sorts of congratulations, to feel the surprised, maybe even envious, glances. Eva had never been ambitious. She was not too fond of publicity and didn't pay much attention to the opinions of others. But now, for some reason, she wanted to be at the center of attention. The pregnancy was probably the reason for that. Once there, Eva paid for the ride, walked up the slippery steps, and opened the front door of the office building. Once inside, she was surprised to see the empty lobby. She asked the board security guard where all the people had gone. "It's a short day," the man explained, not taking his eyes off the TV. "Tomorrow is some holiday." Eva realized that she could get nothing more out of the guard, so she told him she needed to pick up some personal belongings and headed up to the second floor. The stairs and corridors were unusually quiet and dark, as if the building had been abandoned. When she approached the door of her office, Eva stopped, wondering if she wanted to go inside or not. Suddenly, she remembered that she had no keys. Smiling at her own forgetfulness, she was about to leave when suddenly the silence was broken by someone's moans. Eva walked slowly, trying not to tap her heels. The moans came from the CEO's office. Eva looked through the keyhole and saw nothing, but she heard a man's voice. And that man's voice sounded very familiar to her. "Austin, I can't believe it," she thought. "No, it's not him." Eva knocked on the door, grabbed the doorknob, and dared to step inside. The scene she saw was like some silly theatrical production that couldn't be true. There were only two characters in this play: her husband, Austin, and the CEO's daughter, Stacy. Both were half naked, and when they saw Eva, they awkwardly covered themselves with whatever came at hand. "Austin," Eva gasped, looking at her husband and at Stacy. "What's going on here?" Austin, covering himself with a folder, somehow pulled his pants on and stretched out his hand to his wife. "I can explain everything," he exclaimed, covering the still naked Stacy. "Wait, damn, don't look at me like that." Despite it, Eva kept looking at her husband with glazed eyes and remained silent. Then she slammed her fist into the computer on the desk with all her might and stepped back toward the door. "Could you do this to me?" she uttered, trying not to burst into tears. "And when did your affair begin?" "When I was in the hospital, or before." Austin rushed to his wife, but soon regretted it because he got a slap that instantly burned his face. "Curse you, Austin," Eva hissed over her shoulder. "I'll never forgive you for that." She ran out the door, instantly went downstairs, and ran out of the building. Brightening the security guard with her behavior, it felt like someone had poured liquid nitrogen into Eva's chest. She had never felt such a dead cold inside. The world around her had changed. The gray houses looked even more gray and dirty. The birds were silent, and the people passing by had dark, blurry spots instead of faces. These phantoms chased Eva all the way home. She ran into the apartment, collapsed on her knees, and wept. Meredith immediately understood everything and silently sat down on the floor next to Eva. They were sitting like that for a long time. Eva couldn't calm down. The resentment, hatred, and misunderstanding were tearing her apart. Suddenly, like a stab of a knife, a terrible pain pierced Eva's lower abdomen. She fell on her back and clutched her stomach with her hands, screaming loudly in pain. The sharp pain didn't stop. Eva was about to lose consciousness. Meredith realized their niece was in labor and ran to call an ambulance. When she returned, Eva was already unconscious. Eva couldn't remember the childbirth process at all. It was all a blur. When the girl came to her senses, the nurse told her that she had had a boy and asked if she wanted to see him. Eva negatively shook her head and covered herself with a blanket. "What? You had such a difficult labor, and you don't even want to look at the baby?" the nurse said in shock. Eva raised her head and looked at the nurse angrily, making her shut up. She told her to bring her son and leave her alone. The nurse brought her baby and immediately left the ward. Eva began to rock the baby in her arms and cried, looking at the tiny little human being who stretched out his arms to her. She suddenly remembered a recent conversation between two girls about their difficult fates. Now, she found herself in the same situation. Eva had no husband now, and obviously, she didn't have a job either. She had no idea what to do. She avoided meetings with her husband, or rather, Now he was her ex-husband. He only showed up once in her life. She received a letter from Austin asking for forgiveness. Without reading the letter to the end, Eva burned it, as she burned all the bridges connecting her to her ex-husband. She quit her job a week after her return, and a few months later, her high school friend Jessica invited Eva to work at a fish plant in the north of the country on a rotational basis. Jessica had worked there for almost 3 years, and thanks to that job, she found herself a husband. Maybe you'll find someone too, Jessica slightly suggested when she heard about what had happened to Eva. There are many great men in the north of the country. They're all healthy and strong, not like the guys down here. Eva had no interest in love affairs. She only wanted to ensure that her son would have a decent childhood and that Aunt Meredith would have a comfortable old age. She immediately said yes because the salary there was decent. Even the position of a janitor did not freak her out. She realized that the work at the fish factory would be very hard, but after learning that she would be paid 3 times more per month for her work than before, Eva was ready to go there right away. So, after packing her bags and leaving her son Alex in her aunt's care, Eva set off for the north. She worked hard and dreamed of a bright future, trying to forget the past. But the past came back into her life like a storm. One day, Meredith called her with some shocking news. Her ex-husband Austin had been imprisoned. "What do you mean, imprisoned? What happened?" Eva was shocked. Her aunt only knew about what had happened from hearsay. She hesitated a little, remembering all the details. "They say he accepted a top position in the company," she finally said. "A CEO, I guess. He seemed to have succeeded, but God remembers old sins. Anyway, there was a price to pay for everything. Austin was accused of economic crime and imprisoned for 7 years. They say the company doesn't even exist anymore. Everyone has gone into hiding." Eva pictured her ex-husband in prison and felt unwell. She certainly wouldn't wish that on him. "I don't care about that. It's over between us." "Why did you tell me about that?" "To make me feel sorry for him or something," she replied irritably. Meredith mumbled into the phone that she just wanted to share the news with her, but Eva wasn't listening to her anymore. She put the phone in her pocket and looked up at the cloudless northern sky. A strange and unexpected thought occurred to her that maybe somewhere far, far away on the other side of the country, Austin was also looking up at the sky and thinking about her. Eva pushed the thought out of her head and went back to work, picking up the fallen mop. The thought of her ex-husband disappeared as suddenly as it had occurred. 7 years had passed. Austin's prison term came to an end. He walked out the prison gates, accompanied by the prison guard. Austin took a deep breath of the December air, turned to the guard, and said goodbye to him. He then put his hands up in the air and smiled. "That's it. I'm a free man now," he shouted at the top of his voice. "Free?" Austin turned around and walked briskly down the road leading to the bus station without turning back. Austin slept all the way on the bus. He opened his eyes and looked out the window only when the old bus stopped with a creak. The city had changed a lot after all these years. Sitting at a table in a cafe and greedily eating grilled chicken, Austin thought about what he was going to do next. He had nowhere to go. His parents had died 2 years earlier, almost simultaneously. His father had passed away first, and after a couple of months, his mother passed away as well. Their house was probably in a terrible state now, and there was no point in going back there. Sure, he could look for a job here in this city, but Austin knew it was a waste of time. No one was likely to want an employee convicted of an economic crime. Completely absorbed in his gloomy thoughts, he forgot about the chicken and would hardly have remembered it if someone's little hand hadn't crawled at the table to it. Austin caught the hand and looked the thief straight in the eye. "Mister, let me go. I won't do it again," he said pleadingly, sniffing his nose. The man unclenched his fingers, and the boy immediately rushed to the exit. But he tripped over a table leg and fell, dropping several plates. The owner of the diner immediately threatened to rip his ears off. He probably would have done it, but Austin stopped him. "Let the boy go," he said, handing the owner some money. "It's my fault. I scared the kid." He invited the boy to his table and pulled a plate of chicken to him. The boy greedily ate it, and soon there was nothing left on the plate. "When was the last time you ate?" Austin asked the child. The boy raised his palm, bent 3 fingers stained with grease, and showed them to Austin. 3 days ago," he said quietly. The man asked the waiter to bring some more food and began to ask the boy about his life. "My name is Alex," he introduced himself first. "I live with my mother. My grandmother used to live with us, but she died recently and my mom got sick. She's bedridden now. I'm afraid she'll die too, just like Grandma. He was distracted by the waiter bringing and placing a bowl of hot soup in front of him. Alex clutched a spoon in his fist and began to eat quickly. Don't eat so fast. Chew better, Austin said to him. Alex, you know, today is a very important day for me. I got out of prison today. Alex looked at him, frightened, and then asked, What's prison? The man was confused by this question. He didn't know what to say and then answered briefly. Prison is a bad place to be. It would be better if you never knew what it is, he replied. My dad is in prison too, Alex said sharply. I've been waiting for him for a long time, but he's still not here. Mom says he's a fool for getting in there. Austin laughed, took money out of his pocket, then counted out a few banknotes and put them on the table. This is for you, Alex. He handed a couple of banknotes to the boy. Buy medicines for your mom. What's your mother's name? The boy put the money away and smiled. Eva, he answered, and the last name is Harris. I'm Harris too. Alex quickly thanked the man and rushed to the exit. Austin followed the boy. He caught up with him at the exit and caught him by the shoulder. Alex, you won't believe this, he exhaled, squatting down. I happen to know your mom. We used to work together. I'm her friend, you know. I need to see her. Will you take me to her? Huh. Alex hesitated but then agreed to take Austin home. Austin followed him. There was a hurricane in his head and something ached in his chest. The boy led him to a shabby 3-story dormitory that used to belong to a college. Now, the college had ceased to exist, and the dormitory was inhabited by all kinds of low-income citizens, orphans, people with disabilities, and retirees. Austin struggled to open the jammed door, let Alex go first, and found himself in a damp and musty-smelling building. This is where we live, Alex said, smiling sadly. Mom said we used to have our own big apartment. Then she and Grandma sold the apartment and moved here because we needed some money. The boy finished his story as he walked up to the door. Alex opened the door and stepped in. Austin stepped in after him too. The room, as he noticed, was quite small. It was very similar to his prison cell. There was an old bed next to the radiator by the window. His ex-wife, Eva, was lying on it, covered by a blanket. A similar bed, apparently belonging to Alex, stood against the other wall. A small coffee table, scattered with empty medicine bottles and some books, completed this meager interior. Mom, your friend is here to see you, shouted Alex, stroking his mother's hand. He gave me some money. Look. The boy took money out of his pocket and put it on the table, then sat down on the bed and waited to see what would happen next. Eva looked with sleepy eyes at Austin standing in front of her and shrieked. What are you doing here? She whispered, pressing her back against the radiator. How did you find me? Austin pointed to Alex, then asked him to play in the hallway with a toy car. When they were alone in the room, the man sat down on the floor and was silent for a long time. You know, Eva, he said, without raising his eyes, full of tears, when I was in prison, I used to think about how bad it was. I'd also thought about betrayal and how I got set up at the company. It was Stacy and her father who set me up. But it was fair, karma, the boomerang got me. I got what I deserved for my meanness. I wanted to go home, to be free. I wanted to start a new life. I dreamed that when I got out of prison, everything would be the same as before or even better. But today, I met Alex. My son, poor and hungry. Suddenly, I wanted to go back to prison. Bastards like me don't deserve to be here. I don't deserve to be anywhere, not even in hell. You say terrible things, Eva answered in a hoarse voice. I feel sorry for Alex. Who can take care of him? Meredith is gone. There's no one left to take care of him. I'm the only one left, and I'll die soon. Don't be ridiculous, Austin muttered. You're still very young. It's not your time to die. But you sound like an old woman. He looked at Eva, and she cried she couldn't take it anymore. I was wondering, Austin said, covering his face with his hands, had you forgotten me or not? It was important for me to know. Sometimes I go out into the yard, look up at the sky, and think about you. Who else could I be thinking of? Saved my life. And this is how I repaid you for your kindness. I forgave you, she sobbed. I forgave you long ago. Austin covered her with a blanket, then called Alex, who was playing outside the door. He sat him down on his lap. "No, I'm your father," he asked seriously, looking into the boy's eyes, which were as green as Austin's. Alex looked at Austin incredulously and then glanced at his mother. "Dad?" he asked again, from prison. Austin and Eva nodded simultaneously, trying to convince their incredulous son. "Yeah. Hey, Alex," suddenly squealed, jumping to the floor. "Dad's back. Now I have a daddy." He galloped around the room like a little lamb. Austin and Eva watched him, cuddling, not knowing whether they should laugh or cry. At the end of the month, after getting Eva back on her feet, Austin moved her and Alex to his parents' house in the village. The house really needed some repairs, so he decided to renovate it next spring. In the meantime, there were other things to worry about. He needed to get a job and get Alex into school. His neighbor, Jonathan, helped Austin find a job. He offered him a position as a maintenance worker at his sawmill and promised a good salary. Austin immediately accepted this offer. Jonathan gave him half of his salary in advance and provided him with building materials to repair the front of the house. "This is for you to fix the porch gate wicket and maybe fix the front of the house a little bit. I'll bring more in the spring," Jonathan explained as he helped Austin unload the building material into the yard. Austin thanked him and Jonathan left. The man glanced around the yard and called out to Alex, playing outside. "Well, Alex, Christmas is coming," the man said as he sat his son on his lap. "We need a Christmas tree." Alex's eyes sparkled, and he clapped his hands happily. "Christmas tree? Christmas tree? Hooray! Are we going to go into the woods and chop down a Christmas tree?" he shouted. Austin laughed, shook his head, and said, "No, son. We'll go to the market and buy a Christmas tree there. Call your mom. Let's go right now." Alex called his mother, and they came out of the crooked gate together and walked down the street, smiling and laughing.